Okay. Good morning, those colleagues from Busan, South Korea, and good afternoon, colleague and students from Australia. A good day to you, and thank you very much for participating in the inaugural RMIT Busan National University Staff Student Exchange Research webinar. My name is Vin Tai, and I'm currently a staff member at the Department of Supply Chain and Logistics, School of Accounting, Information System and Supply Chain. And it is my great honor today to kickstart the inaugural staff student exchange from the two collaborating university. For your information, this staff student exchange is one of the outcomes of a current project on building the Australia-Korea Supply Chain Resilient Research Capability Platform, a project which is currently funded by the Australia-Korea Foundation under the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade from the Australian government. And to that, we would like to extend again our great thanks to the funding body. Without further ado, I would like now to proceed with the so-called acknowledgement of country. Nowadays in Australia, what we are doing, what we are standing right now is on the land of the Aboriginal Australian, and we have to give the acknowledgement of country. So RMIT University acknowledges the people of the Waigurong and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded land we conduct the business of RMIT University. RMIT respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders, past, present, and emerging. And while we conduct our work remotely, I want to pay my respect to the wider unceded lands on this nation. Now, before we moving on, I would like to cautiously remind you to mute your microphone and turn off your webcams to present the quality of the bandwidth. Thank you. Now, we have a very tight agenda, but very exciting programs of presentation and discussion today. As you can see, we have 5 presentations, 3 from Busan National University and 2 from RMIT University. This great session will be facilitated by my colleague, Professor Bui Kam, who is also a staff member from the Department of Supply Chain and Logistics, School of Accounting, Information System and Supply Chain, RMIT University. Without further ado, I would like now to pass on the floor to Professor Bui Kam to moderate the session. Bui, when you are ready, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Just let me organize a few things on my desktop here. Thank you for the introductions to the country, and thank you for organizing this event. It has been my great pleasure to be able to moderate this event. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen just for the introductory slides. I assume you can see my screen now. As Associate Professor Vin Tai has mentioned, we have 5 presentations today. Our first presentation today is by Professor Kim Mi. I hope I pronounced that correctly, right? And Professor Kim Mi is from Busan University. She is an assistant professor at the Graduate School of International Studies. She obtained her PhD in international business from the Korean University Business Schools. Her research interest lies in international business and marketing strategies. Her recent research projects are on organizational capabilities in the context of international new product development and sustainable international business practices. All those, I believe, are very much linked to what she's going to tell us today. And I'm very happy that we are able to have Professor Kim here sharing her project with us. The title of her presentation is Overcoming Country of Origin Image Constraints on Hiring. Subtitle, CSR as the Key Role of Resilient Management. I would not waste time anymore. Professor Kim, you are ready. The screen is yours. I will mute my mic now and pass the screen over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, and I'm glad to meet you guys, and many thanks for inviting me and giving a chance to present my research. Actually, this research is about the international human research management to overcome the country of origin images constraints on hirings. And these studies just suggest the CSRs as the key roles of resilient management. Okay, actually, the many multinational companies just face with the environmental uncertainties in the international market. Actually, they just face the unfamiliar conditions, and they can handle these uncertainties to get some strategic key roles from the local employees. Actually, in these challenges, multinational companies can get some strategic ways to use and constrain the local employees' knowledges, skills, and abilities as a competitive advantages. Actually, these local employees' abilities kind of to handle the different local environments and to meet local specific needs. So many M&Es just want to get some talented local employees and can use these informations and knowledges of local employees to handle the unfamiliar conditions. However, these foreign firms have some challenges to attract the superior local talents in local market because due to the liabilities of foreigners, the companies have some challenges with the unknown, the corporate names or unfamiliarities. So in these challenges, the companies also faced with the limited organizational informations from advertisement, job postings, and brands. However, actually there are some different challenges from the country of origins of M&Es. Actually, E-M&Es means emerging market multinational enterprises, and D-M&E means the developed markets. Yes, the developed market multinationals. So in this context, maybe the E-M&Es have some more disadvantages compared with the D-M&Es to attract the local employees due to the unfamiliar country of origin images implying the poor working conditions. So these studies got some three different research questions. The first one is, yes, the compare with to D-M&Es. How do E-M&Es that suffers from attracting local talents due to the country images? And this study is just to suggest the CSRs to overcome the poor country of origin images in attracting local talents. Actually, drawing upon the signaling theories, individuals use the information as a signals to evaluate the qualities of a product in international marketing. However, these studies conduct these concepts of signaling theories in international human resource management. So maybe the potential participant or potential applicants can use the information of companies as a signals to evaluate the qualities of companies. So these informations can be the general images, country images, or CSR activities. Additionally, these studies conduct the concepts of brand equity theories as well. Actually, in the concepts of brand equity theories, brand equities can be the symbolic attributes perceived by consumers about the products to affect their purchasing decision. So actually, in international marketing areas, the brand equity theories just to include the concepts of purchasing decision or purchasing behaviors for the foreign consumers. However, these studies conduct the concepts of brand equity theories in organizational reputations perceived by potential employers to affect job intentions. So, drawing upon the signaling theories as well as brand equity theories, maybe the potential applicants can use the information of companies in terms of country images. And last one is about the social identity theories. Actually, social identity theories argue the individuals intend to the belongings to the certain social groups together with some emotional and value significance of group memberships. So maybe potential applicants can want to belong to a certain companies which have some better CSR performance. So these studies suggest the CSR activities to overcome the poorer country of origin images to the potential employees. Actually, the concepts of country of origin images is from the international marketing and marketing areas. Country of origin images is a kind of impressions or stereotypes based on the country's cultures, political systems, and technological or economic developments. However, actually, these country of origin images can be the one significant symbolic information codes to potential local job seekers' perceptions as well. Actually, these country of origin images refer the levels of economics and technological advancement as the signals that contribute to a general country images for foreign MNEs. However, compared with the DMNEs, maybe the EMNEs can suffer from the poorer countries' images because these poorer country of origin images can be referred the perceptions of lower levels of economics and technological developments. And these images can be referred to poorer working conditions, lower salaries, and poor employees' benefits. So these studies suggest hypothesis ones like this, the local job seekers will have less intentions to apply to EMNEs than DMNEs. However, actually DMNEs, compared with the DMNEs, EMNEs, they have to overcome these poorer country of origin images to attract local talent. So we suggest the CSR activities. Actually, CSR refers the extent to which organizations include the social and environmental considerations in their business operations and with the multiple stakeholders. Drawing upon the signaling theories and brand equity theories and the social identity theories, these CSR activities can be the crucial signals about the good working conditions and high business standard and agreeable values and norms. However, these positive effects of CSR activities can be differed from the country of origins. Actually, DMNEs already have some preferred country's images. So these preferred country images can give some information or the signals to get the good conditions of companies. So these DMNEs can enjoy the advanced home country images in terms of developments and implying the relatively high employment standard in host countries. So the potential applicants already have some preferred country images of the MNEs. Maybe there is a little contributions of CSR information to refer the good working conditions for the MNEs. However, compared with the MNEs, yes, EMNEs have some problems or challenges from the broader country of origin images. So the CSR activities can help to overcome these broader country of origin images for EMNEs. Because these CSR activities give some information or perceptions to get some better working conditions, including the employees' benefits. So CSR activities can help to overcome the unfamiliar or unfavorable countries of origin images and attract the high-quality local workforce. So hypothesis 2 is about that the positive moderating effects of CSRs on the relationship between the country of origin images and local applicants' intentions to appliance will be stronger for EMNEs than for DMNEs. So to confirm that these two hypotheses, this study set the experimental research designs with the Korean potential applicants. Actually, we just choose the Korean potential applicants and we choose the two different country of origin images context, the Chinese firms and US firms. Actually, we chose the Chinese firms as emerging market multinational corporations and US firms as developed market multinational enterprises. And we just set the two different conditions related to the CSRs, including the no CSR activities versus good CSR activities. However, we need to confirm the different country images of Chinese firms and the US firms. So we conduct the pretest for the country images using the surveys to 62 Korean undergraduate students first. So the participants just evaluate the cognitive images of given countries, US, China, and Korea. And as you can see here, there is significant differences between the China, Korea, and the US. So we confirm that there are different perceptions toward the three different destinations of Korea, US, and China. So we started the major experimental studies with the 189 Korean undergraduate students as potential job seekers. So there are 4 between subject conditions assigned randomly, including the 2x2 conditions, the country of origins, including the Chinese firms versus US firms, and 2 CSR conditions, including the no CSR activities and the good CSR activities. So we distribute the questionnaires, including the introductions, individual information surveys, and scenario calls, and the participants just evaluate the job intentions toward a certain companies, including the Chinese and US firms. And we also evaluate the perceptions of country of origins of the participants and the recognitions of CSR activities as well. Actually, this is one samples for scenarios with the good CSR activities of US firms. As we can see here, we give some information about the country image, the country origins rapidly, and we just include the 4 different types of CSR activities in a scenarios as well. So after reading these scenarios, the participants evaluate their own over job pursuits intentions to given companies. So we evaluate the over job pursuit intentions from the index of the Greenings and Turbans and Evans and Davis. Before examining the hypothesis, we just conduct the manipulation check as well. So participants perceive the companies regarding the country of origins and CSR activities, and 5 items was used to evaluate the cognitive evaluations of the given companies, including the economic development, living standard, advanced technologies, and so on. And 6 items were used to confirm the recognitions of the CSR activities, including the fairness, trust, ethics, involvement, good images, and positive feelings. And as you can see here, there are significant differences between perceptions of country images between the US firms and Chinese firms. And US firms have some more favorable images compared with the Chinese firms. And there is no significant difference perceptions of CSR activities between the Chinese and US firms. So to confirm our hypothesis, so this study is conducted two-way anabas for the job pursuing intentions. And we just checked the main effects of controllable origins as well as the interaction terms of the controllable origins and CSR activities. And as you can see here, there is a significant main effects of controllable origins. So the potential applicants can be attracted from the favorable controllable origin images compared with EMNEs, and we confirm the significant interaction effects of the CSR activities in these relationships between controllable origins and job pursuing intentions for potential job seekers. However, we need to confirm the exact roles of CSR activities in these relationships. So we conduct the planned contrast test for the job pursuing intentions additionally. So as you can see here, in the context of the no CSR activities versus the good CSR activities, there is no significant differences in the context of Chinese firms. No, yes, in the US firms. However, there is a significant differences of the no CSR activities and good CSR activities for the Chinese firms. So hypothesis 1 and 2 were supported in these studies. Actually, there are lots of studies about this attracting local talents. However, the most studies just focused on the developed market multinational enterprises. But as growing levels of participations of the emerging market multinational enterprises, we need to confirm the context of EMNEs in international business areas. So these studies expand the research areas from DMNEs to EMNEs. And drawing upon the signaling theories, brand equity theories, and social identity theories, these studies suggest the roles of controllable origin images as well as CSR activities. Actually, these theoretical backgrounds were in the international marketing areas. So we just conduct these concepts of international marketing areas to the human resource management in international business. So it can be some theoretical implications of these studies as well. And we suggest if there is a positive controllable origin images, yes, the companies that can attract the potential local talents easily. However, compared with the DMNEs, due to the poorer controllable origin images of the EMNEs, these companies can overcome these challenges by the CSR activities to give some good information and knowledge about the working conditions. However, we just set the specific conditions such as this, that we just set the two different controllable origin images in the Chinese companies and US companies, and participants were only the Korean, the job seeker, actually potential job seekers. So the further research can conduct a similar cross-country comparative studies by using the actual job seekers, and they can give some expansions of the research context in the cultures or the personal perspectives of certain countries. And even these studies include the different aspects of CSR activities in all scenarios, but we didn't confirm the different effects of sub-constructs of CSR activities. Actually, Carroll's introduced the CSR domains such as the economics, legal, ethical, and philanthropical responsibilities. Maybe there is a different effects of these sub-constructs of CSR activities. So further studies that can confirm or explore the different effects, different levels of effects of CSR activities. And maybe the further studies can confirm the different effects by the degrees and levels of CSR activities. And actually, these studies just confirm the no CSR activities versus the good CSR activities to explore the exact laws of country of origin images. However, there can be the negative CSR activities as well. So the further studies can confirm the different effects of negative CSR activities versus the positive CSR activities as well. And lastly, actually there might be the lowers of CSR activities in the age of COVID-19 pandemics. So the further studies can explore the lowers of CSR activities in the age of COVID-19 pandemics as well. Okay, actually, this studies is about the international human resource management, which is quite differ from the logistics or the supply chain management, but these concepts can be used in the supply chain management or logistic context as well. I hope so, yeah. And if there is any questions or the suggestions, please let me know freely. It will be helpful to advance these studies further.
Thank you, Professor Kim, for a very interesting study and some very illuminating findings. I'm opening the floor to questions to the audience for questions or comments that you have for Professor Kim. As we say, this is a forum for exchange of ideas, informations. So anyone has any questions or any comments for Professor Kim, can you please post it in the chat box or please raise your hands. We have about 2 minutes before we pass on to the next speaker. Anyone, please? Somebody, I cannot see. Mohammed, yes, please. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. That was a very, very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much. My question, you could take it as comments or something like you rightly said, you need some comments for improving your work. So the first thing I would like to ask is that the participants, because we don't know the profile, although you mentioned that they are local people that you look at, but are these participants in a job already, or are these job seekers, people who are looking for are looking for job now? Because that would be very, very different. These people might not have that much option. So we need to know whether these participants are in a job already, well established, and are just simply looking for a new environment or new challenging things to do. The second one is what is are the main motivation for local job employers that you said when considering a job offer? Are they looking at the package, or are they looking at just country of origin or CSR activities of companies as their motivation? Do you have any indication at all about the main reason for people looking for the job? Are they concerned? Because we do know that people across the globe are working in certain environments that they consider maybe non-democratic, and they also consider as endemic violators of intellectual property rights and copyright activities, yet they are working in those places as long as the whatever it is, the job offer package that is offered to them is good enough. So these are two comments that I would like you to consider. You may want to comment on them, or you could just note them as a means for further improvements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mama. Actually, this study is just set the limited conditions for the potential job seekers and not the exact job workers now. So actually, in the recruiting situations, the job seekers, actually potential job seekers, they gave some information and knowledge to apply to certain companies. So we just said the potential job seekers, and the participants was the undergraduate student enrolled in upper levels management classes. But as I mentioned before, actually, as I mentioned in limitation situation, yes, actually this is just set the potential job seekers, not exact job seekers, right? So maybe the further studies can confirm or explore this context in the real job seekers, not only for the potential job seekers. It can be some limitations, but yes, the further studies can confirm that there is effects for the exact job seekers as well. And the second ones, actually, these studies started from the two give some answers like this. Actually, the foreign companies always struggles to handle the unfamiliar conditions. There is environmental uncertainties, or there is some brighter conditions for the foreign companies due to the liability of foreigners. These foreign companies can need to, achieve the better performance to compete with the local companies or the larger sized foreign companies as well. So we've just thought the crucial case of these foreign companies to achieve the better performance in host countries. It means the local countries, the local talent, local employees can be the strategic weapons to achieve the knowledges and informations related to the familiar conditions. So the foreign companies need to attract the talent, local employees, and companies can use this source of information from the local talents. So we just set the local employees situations to overcome the liability of foreigners or to achieve the better performance in foreign countries. So we just set these research questions and this research.
Thank you, Professor Kim. I think because we are over by about 3 to 4 minutes now, I have to say that we will move on to the second speaker, but I can assume that many of you would have further comments or questions. Can you please post it in the chat box? We will come back to it when all the other speakers have finished. Maybe that's what we will do it, so that we will not so-called disrupt these schedules too much. All right. Once again, thank you, Professor Kim. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
All right. I would now invite our second speaker. I'll share my screen now. You can see my screen, I hope. Our second speaker today is from RMIT University, and she is Omi Ahmad. Omi Ahmad is a recent graduate of our Master of Supply Chain and Logistics program here, and she is one of our best because she's the recipient of the 2021 David Hayes Supply Chain and Logistics Scholarship. She has worked in the Australian pharmaceutical industry for more than 6 years and also within supply chains for over 3 years. Her interest is in supply chain efficiencies and process optimization as a tool for business improvement. So I will not add anything more, and I will pass the floor over to Omi. Omi, you ready? You can share your screen. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right. Can you share your slides?
Yes, I'll just share it there. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yep.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Let me just start by saying I'm a little bit nervous today because of the sheer amount of intellect in this conversation. But I will do my best to present just a little bit about the industry that I've worked in and some of the issues and pitfalls that I've seen come up, especially throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll just start by having a quick look at the pharmaceutical industry of Australia before we look at some of the disruptions and the effect that COVID-19 has had on the pharmaceutical industry, as well as how certain companies have responded and how well they've responded, as well as finally what I believe is my understanding of the best road to resilience in the pharmaceutical supply chain. Now, if we have a quick look at the Australian pharmaceutical industry, the industry encompasses over 1,465 businesses and employs a whopping 12,000 people nationally. The industry generates over $18 billion in revenue and over $700 million in profit. Not unexpectedly, the COVID-19 pandemic caused a great lift in these revenues. If you look at the graph there between 2019 and 2021, you'll see a large gap between the industry revenue and the pharmacy's revenue because of lockdowns and other factors that will come through to later on in the presentation. Now, the growth has put a significant amount of pressure on the pharmaceutical industry, especially due to the operational disruptions that have been caused. And to provide some perspective, let's have a look at the pharmaceutical industry's operations. Now, with most operational disruptions, planned operational disruptions such as stock takes, relocations, and shortages, it's easier for the company to plan these and obviously take mitigating steps. However, in the situation of a global pandemic like COVID-19, obviously there's no way to plan for it and there's no way to take precautionary measures. It's more of a react instead of being proactive in your actions. And from the demand and supply planning perspective, COVID-19 has had a great impact in the following four aspects of the business: sales, supply, logistics, and operations. The impact of sales was largely due to the sudden change in demand of selected lines, as you could probably imagine, such as antibacterials and sanitizing equipment, as well as the drop-off of other lines that were less important and less prioritized by the daily consumer. Due to the sudden rise in demand for sanitizers and antibacterial equipment, we can see that a lot of new products were introduced into the market that were previously absent and not maintained in the stores locally. And as a result of this, the companies have had to work on basically no history, no forecasting ability, and no capability of knowing how much sales or how much revenue would be generated, or even how well the product would perform. As a result, from the company's perspective, it was often a matter of operating blindly. Additionally, if we look at the sudden demand changes, as I mentioned, we have the selective demand growth, new products and low forecast accuracy, and as well as customer migration and e-commerce, especially due to the lockdowns that we've seen across Australia nationally. A significant number of customers migrated onto the e-commerce platforms, increasing pressure on previously rather small platforms. So maybe about 10% of all customers were operating and purchasing, and the business's operations were very little in that aspect. With all of a sudden, with the lockdowns, this increased to over 70%. So as you can imagine, the warehouse capacity and the order fulfillment capacity for these customers was largely strained as well. Now, the business addressed these issues by assessing current SKUs and forecasting potential growth due to COVID. Purchasing restrictions were also placed in stores to prevent panic buying and mitigate issues caused from that. Most importantly, sales and demands were constantly being reviewed and adjusted to increase accuracy in purchasing from the retailer's end of it. The business also took steps to better manage traffic in the DCs. For example, increasing the amount of space by shifting e-commerce operations to larger DCs and bringing down capacity in the larger DCs for local management. Additionally, steps were taken to ensure that the e-commerce business was operating better by troubleshooting IT issues and making sure that the additional pressure coming onto the IT platforms were being handled appropriately. Now, secondly, one of the biggest impacts obviously were felt in the supply of the required lines. In the most cases, the availability of stock wasn't necessarily in the hands of the retail companies. So basically, it was the gap of information, or I would say cooperation, between the manufacturers, often distributors, and the retailers. Now, shortage of raw materials and inability to manufacture for the increased demand was also an issue faced by most suppliers. Unfortunately, this was not something that was immediately or could be immediately handled. It was more of something that had to be addressed as time went along. Sorry, I think I am losing my slides. Apologies. Can you hear me still? I'm getting a bit of an echo.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Yes, we can hear you.
Apologies. Additionally, the company addressed these supply issues by putting restrictions, as I mentioned, on necessary goods and on high demand goods to prevent buyers from panic buying and overstocking themselves, and ensuring that there was a fair distribution in the market for the products. In addition, alternative suppliers were sourced to minimize out of stocks, and the business took steps to cooperate with suppliers to maximize shipping efficiency and stock purchasing for international goods. And local suppliers were also sourced to fill demand gaps. Now, the impact of logistics. The impact of logistics was largely seen in border restrictions and 3PLs. Management, while shipping of goods was not halted, interstate deliveries between bushfires in late 2019 and the COVID restrictions of having shipments coming in from internationally was placing a lot of pressure on getting goods into the local markets as well. And there was additional costs being seen for warehouse handling. These were causing additional complications in stock movement and required optimization. Mismanagement and misconduct between suppliers and 3PLs was also very common, but COVID restrictions caused the normal issues to have a great deal of impact on operations. Failure to abide by company requirements was something that previously a lot of suppliers allowed, sort of as a goodwill, sort of as a, okay, it's happened, let's just move on. But because of stricter laws, because of stricter regulations placed on the companies by the government, this was no longer something that could be overlooked and had to be maintained. And as a result, a lot of times what happened is when deliveries were made and proper guidelines weren't maintained, deliveries had to be rejected, increasing the shortage and increasing the gap of availability of the products in the market. Now, in order to mitigate this, the business took urgent steps to reorganize and reroute supply chain capabilities, and the company increased delivery fail-safes and hub and spokes, as well as line extensions in various DCs. For example, previously where only one DC, say in Victoria, held the majority of the lines or all of the lines, this was then diversified so that other DCs, such as distribution centers in Queensland and New South Wales, had the similar range, so that in the instance where one DC had to shut down for cleaning, for any sort of COVID-related impact, the products were still available to the stores from the other DCs. Now, Operations-wise, the company faced, as I mentioned, numerous operational issues, with most common was the issues caused by quarantine. As COVID cases rose throughout the year, site closures became common and needed mandatory cleaning and maintenance. Employees were required to regularly test and quarantine, and it was also commonplace to have a shortage of employees due to rapid spread of infections within the workplace, outside of the workplace, and the sudden need for a large number of the employees to be absent in order to get testing done. Additionally, in order to abide by the COVID workplace health restrictions, the company had to set out government-mandated check-ins, which allowed the company as well as the government to monitor the amount of people moving through the sites and moving through the office spaces. This was also a requirement for delivery drivers entering into the premise to make deliveries and to pick up orders as well. Now, in order to address these issues, the company took steps to undertake constant cleaning of sites and offices. Most offices had round-the-clock cleaning that took place even during work hours. Deep cleaning was also done in the event of a breakout or a suspected case. Additionally, COVID hotlines and management teams were established to enforce these regulations and to complete necessary contact tracing in the event of an outbreak. Due to identified spread of COVID in casual workers, the company also made a lot of companies actually made a large changes in order to make casuals into permanent. So a large number of factory and DC workers were hired on a permanent basis instead of the ongoing casual basis, which was the norm at the time, in order to prevent a lot of movement between different workspaces and the spread of COVID in effect. Now, let's evaluate the effectiveness of the company's response to the issues caused by COVID. In this evaluation, we're going to look at the following 6 markers that show the best practice. Now, in case of the sales, identified issues were communicated to the buyers, stores, and suppliers to minimize the losses and out of stock. Constant SKUs assessment were also allowed for increased accuracy in issue identification. Purchasing restrictions and optimization allowed for core issues to be addressed on customer and supply issue ends. Proactive steps were also taken to identify potential supply issues and communication of supply issues to the buyers. Now, let's take a look at the appraisal. Now, sudden demand changes, as we mentioned, was leading to a lot of issues with knowing whether there was the correct amount of stocks, where we were ranging the correct amount of SKUs in the DCs, and whether the correct products were under purchasing restrictions. Now, communication of this was made timely to the buyers of the company, to the suppliers, and made sure that information was made across to the stores. I'm so sorry, I'm having some issues with my slides. They're automatically changing for some reason. I apologize for that. Communication of supply issues to buyers allowed the company to enforce sales restrictions and undertake steps to source products from alternative suppliers. Stores and sales allocated and made limitations also allowed the business to control outbound stock to best manage equity of distribution of products in the market. Local sourcing provided an alternative solution to international supply issues, and furthermore, cooperating with the suppliers allowed the company to proactively address supply issues and establish better and more effective communication with the suppliers in the long run. Now, the COVID hotline and management team ensured that any relative communications was passed on to the relevant parties. Safety issues were then addressed through the constant and deep site cleaning, and contamination and spread were safely mitigated by reducing casual staffs and making more staff permanent instead. instead of hiring third-party workers, and assessments were enforced to minimize the spread of COVID. Now, overall, if we look at the performance of the company, we can see that most companies responded well to the issues arising from COVID and were highly effective and well implemented in the steps they took to manage the issues that came up. Now, let's take a look at what we understand from resilience. Most cases, when we talk about resilience, we're talking about recovering to a previous point of well management. Now, in the case of supply chain, especially in the case of COVID-19 and such a global effect that it's had on companies around the world, we have to think more about not just the recovery to the previous state, but also adapting to changing environments, because the environments that we were previously operating in pre-COVID no longer exist. The factors that affect are no longer the exact same. We have new factors that are affecting supply chain. There's new factors and new patterns of behavior in the customers, in the suppliers, in the manufacturers, every aspect of the supply chain. We also have to work on improving efficiency in adversity, because clearly we've seen through COVID-19 is that this is not the first or only disruption that's going to come out onto the supply chain, but we need to be prepared for anything else that can happen in order to maintain normal operations as much as possible. Thirdly, the companies need to focus on maintaining productivity despite these disruptions. And lastly, predicting and preventing future impact from future risks. For example, using predictive analytics and predictive data collection in order to predict and prevent future, I suppose, widespread disruptions. Now, if we look at some metrics for resilience, we can look at three identified metrics: time to survive, time to recover, and time to thrive. Now, from time to survive, we're talking about what is the here and the now. So basically, this is during the pandemic, during the time of crisis, what needs to be done, what issues are most pressing, what issues need to be addressed in order to get the operations to resume as they would normally be. Secondly, we have the time to recover, which is how long till operations are at normal capacity. While time to survive ensures that operations are continuing, time to recover allows us to think about how far we are from normal operations, not just the immediate, more as in fulfillment of back orders, fulfillment of orders pending, and how to get your products to the customers with the least amount of disturbance. Lastly, we have time to thrive, which discusses, I suppose, how this disruption has affected your operational understanding. What kind of changes, what kind of fallout are you getting from it? How has it affected your customer base in the long term? How has it affected your operations in the long term? What about over ordering? How many of your lines, how many of your SKUs have been over ordered due to the panic buying or panic ordering from the companies during the time of crisis? What are you going to do with those overstocks? How are you going to manage that stock and ensure that you're reacting to it to ensure the minimum amount of waste from stock holding and stock destruction? Next, if we look at a couple of strategies for resilience, we have diversify, build reserves, and predict and prepare. So as I mentioned before, previously, pre-COVID, there was a lot of issues in where we're getting our sources, where we're getting our stock, and how much stock we want to hold on to. So with the strategies, when you're looking at strategies for resilience, the company has to understand that single sourcing is not necessarily going to be the best way. Sometimes you have to spread out and source from multiple sources, so that in case you have a localized disruption, you know that you have a backup plan in order to get that stock to you, or in order to get that stock to your customers. Secondly, building reserves. So this refers mainly to safety stock. Most companies will try and keep a very minimum amount of safety stock, which is not necessarily the best thing to do. I think in my opinion, it has to be a fluctuating path that you follow. Again, predict and prepare. So use analytics, use data collection in order to build yourself up and gain the most information you can in order to predict and prepare for future risks. Now, as I was mentioning, sorry if I've gone over time,
sorry. Yeah, can you wrap it up in between 1 and 2 minutes?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. So pre-COVID supply chain, as I mentioned, companies focus a lot on lean and single sourcing, information hoarding and monetization, whereas by which I mean that information gathered from one company, they tended to keep it to themselves and not share it with their supply chain partners, which, as we saw during COVID, was causing issues in supply and getting stock to the right people. Competition among supply chain partners was very high, which is unfortunate because as a supply chain, you need to be working together in order to get the best result and make the most optimized operations. Now, with the future of resilient supply chain, we're talking about multi-sourcing options to prevent risks from localized disruptions, as I mentioned, expansion of geographical diversity. So instead of concentrated operations in certain areas, we need to explore more areas for operations and sourcings that previously may not have been considered. Investing in new technology, for example, optimization tools, integration of collaborative workforces, flexible working platforms for employees, collaboration and acquisition. So generally fighting the need to have complete control over the supply chain and establishing more trust between the supply chain partners so that you have a better working partnership and each player can play to their own strengths and bring that into the whole of the operation. And lastly, as of course, predictive supply chain risk management, understanding possible obstacles, risk scenarios, and establishing alternative measures. Thank you so much for your patience. And again, I am so sorry about the issues I was having with my slides. I apologize. Any questions?
That's okay, Omi. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You have certainly given us a lot of things to chew over, lots of food for thought. Because we are running a bit over, I have to so-called hold all the questions. But if you have questions, please post it in the chat. And I would like to now move very quickly over to our next speaker. All right, I'll share my screen here. Our next speaker is from Busan National University, and she is Kim Jin-joo. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. And yes. Jin-joo is a PhD candidate of the Graduate School of International Studies, majoring in international logistics and port management. She is now in charge of an import-export task of International Postal Mail at Busan International Post Office. And her main research interests are sustainable supply chain strategies and humanitarian logistics. So her topic today is on literature review of humanitarian logistics using networking and topic modeling. All right. The floor is yours, Jinyu. Can you share your slides? I'll stop sharing now.
Please give me a moment. Sorry. Please give me a moment.
It's okay. Yeah, go ahead. We can see your slide now.
Maybe there is some technical problem, so maybe this screen is so small. Please understand it. Can you?
No, we can all see it very clearly. Please proceed.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate for inviting me. I am Jinju Kim, a presenter of this session. First of all, I'd like to say it is a great honor to give a presentation on my research, a systematic literature review on humanitarian logistics. As you can assume, disasters and pandemic have effect on undeveloped countries more seriously. Therefore, in my opinion, through studying humanitarian logistics, some ideas on resilience in affected nations can be drawn, and that is why I prepared my presentation. Let me start. My presentation will proceed following these steps. Before entering the contents, please be informed that the HR in the file means humanitarian logistics. As you all know, the world is suffering from the disasters which are getting more intensively and harshly like COVID-19, and so the importance of humanitarian logistics is rising accordingly. Humanitarian logistics is considered the integral and backbone to any relief operation, and this can be confirmed with the fact that humanitarian logistics cost ranging from 62% to 79% of all relief activities. Until now, to analyze research trends and give future direction on humanitarian logistics, many attempts were tried like this, and these were performed usually using traditional and systematic and bibliometric methodology. However, network science, a new research methodology paradigm, was not adopted in humanitarian logistics. Network science is considered to uncover significant research findings not easily discovered using other existing methods. So I decided to perform literature review using a sort of network science, that is keyword frequency analysis, keyword network analysis, and topic modeling methods. So, and to the best of my knowledge, this attempt is the first of its kind in research trend analysis in humanitarian logistics. The purpose of my research is to show research trends in comprehensive and objective manner using network science and suggest future research direction. I conducted research following these steps. Starting with data collection, data pre-processing was conducted. Actually, this step took so long and needed much effort and care to gain exact result. After those steps, I deduced bibliometric, keyword frequency, keyword network, and topic modeling analysis results. From now on, I will introduce the analysis result. First, I found 1,058 academic articles and reviews on humanitarian logistics. As you can see in the chart, the number of studies soared after 2009. This reconfirms several claims that there were only a handful of articles till 2005 and sharp increase after 2009 in humanitarian logistics. The top publishing journal on humanitarian logistics is Journal of Humanitarian Logistics and Supply Chain Management, accounting for 11.6% of total papers. Meanwhile, natural disasters were mainly stated, but man-made were mentioned marginally. Let's move on to the next. I conducted keyword frequency analysis applying TF and TF-IDF analysis from 2005 to 2019 on a 5-year basis. TF analysis measures the frequency of appearance of keywords of all documents. TF analysis is used to find important words in all documents. However, TF-IDF value is measured by frequency of each word in a specific document, so it can show how much significance each word has in a particular document. In the first period, there were trials to define humanitarian logistics and confirm the necessity of it. These trends can be identified with the words like, it's so small, preparation, disruption, private sector, and vulnerability. In the second period, the interest moved on to the practical aspect and manpower management. You can check this with the words like procurement, big routines, personnel, education, etc. Lastly, in the third period, coordination and arrange base for supplies attracted the attention of researchers with the words such as coordination, partner, sensitivity analysis. I conduct a keyword network analysis using degree centrality and betweenness centrality. Degree centrality is measured by the total amount of direct links with other nodes. The higher degree centrality, the more concepts and subjects are linked to the words. The main concern of each period were stressing importance of humanitarian logistics and practical progress and supplying and cooperation. And you can find these trends with the words like this. Betweenness centrality is used to measure mediation role of a node. The higher betweenness centrality a word has, the more leading fusion and connection it has. In the first period, through the words like equipment, chaos, early warning system, the studies on severe damages of disasters and instant response were performed. In the second period, when the Sudan and Syria were during the civil war, the scope of research on humanitarian logistics was broadened through the words like emergency supplies, disaster-affected regions. In the third period, supplies of relief goods, required infrastructures, and cooperation were main topic with the words like provision, feasibility, and trust. The next map shows the different aspects of each period. In the first period, the key network were broadly divided into 6 clusters. Perhaps this being the beginning of the humanitarian logistics studies, researchers were focusing on several separate topics. In the period second, several loose clusters and individual nodes were detected. This indicates that the research focus was expanding and new directions were being explored. In the map of period third, a tight network is seen. This means that as more studies were conducted, the density of the network became tighter. Although the shape of all periods looks similar to the period third, it is denser as it considers all periods as target. Our next step is topic modeling analysis. I extracted 9 topics using LDA, topic modeling analysis. The 9 topics are coordination, preparation, sustainable development, stakeholders, recovery, facilities location, emergent response, transportation, and supply and sourcing. Facilities location was the most, and recovery was the least studied. To check main topics in the, to see the topics are divided individually overall, you can confirm the 9 topics were extracted significantly. To check main topics in period manner, preparation, recovery were mains in the first period. Facility location, transportation, and supplying and sourcing were main interest in the second period. In the third period, along with the main topics in the second period like this, coordination appeared as one of mains. This trend shows the cold topic are the preparation, recovery, emergent response, and stakeholders. But hot topics are coordination, facilities location, supplying and sourcing. It means hot topics are getting more attention, and this trend is likely to continue. Until now, I introduced my research. I am very proud that I conducted research trend analysis from a new and objective perspective. I showed research trends in a comprehensive and macroscopic way. I also could find the used 3 methods like keyword frequency analysis, keyword network analysis, and topic modeling made all similar results. That means the 3 methods are all significant to analyze research trends. However, limitations also exist. By limiting the research keywords to 4 types and to academic papers and reviews, I couldn't extend my research to broader scope. Besides, I included some medical logistics, so I have a limitation in terms of inclusively determining the logistics characteristics. Therefore, I suggest extending such keywords more than 4 and expanding the analytical subject to the newspapers, conference materials, and interviews with hands-on workers. By doing those, next researchers can broaden research scope and uncover urgent and meaningful research topics. In addition, I recommend studies on policies, waste disposal, and customs clearance management in humanitarian logistics as the next research topics. Before ending my presentation, I would like to say, as humanitarian logistics is directly connected to people's lives, it is very crucial and needing more interest and effort. So I want this presentation is the chance for you to know the being of humanitarian logistics and how many trials to improve the humanitarian logistics have been so far. Humanitarian logistics will attract my attention and I will keep focusing on this area. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. You have given a very what do you call thorough and comprehensive analysis of the literature. But because of the time, as I mentioned during the when the previous speaker finished, we will leave all the questions. We'll leave all the questions to the end. But thank you very much. It is a fantastic or very fascinating analysis that you have conducted on the literature of humanitarian logistics. Cảm ơn hai là. All right, I will move on now in the interest of maintaining time to the schedule as much as possible. I'll move on now to our next speaker. Let me share my screen. Our next speaker is Dimas Harrison Caffey. Caffey? I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Dimas is going to talk on strengthening the supply chain partnerships during pandemic through organization integrations. Dimas is a PhD candidate at Pusan National University, majoring in international trade and commerce. He has managed a national and international organization with 10 years of expertise collaborating with a variety of stakeholders, including government, academia, community, and the media. He's very enthusiastic about creating and sharing knowledge with the community by establishing an educational community called the, I hope I can pronounce this, bcswakorea.com, which is built on communication technology by providing mentorship programs to over 250 or 2,500, I beg your pardon, students. And currently, of course, he's studying supply chain risks and resilient issues in the context of Indonesian agriculture. So over to you, Dimas. If you are ready, I'll stop sharing my screen now. Over to you, Dimas.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Bokin. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so
yep,
good afternoon from Korea, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dimas. So today I would like to discussing my idea in lettering review about strengthen the supply chain partnership during pandemic through organization integration. So at the first, I will talk about the background, challenges, objective, result discussion, and conclusion. It started when I researched some economic impact during pandemic in Southeast Asia, including my country, Indonesia. So I found like interesting information that during the lockdown, so we know that lockdown is really familiar with us in any country. So during the lockdown, there is an impact of the interoperability input and output approach. In this background, I found from Philippines. So they have like maybe three information or three quarantine method. First is ECQ, the enhanced community quarantine. During that period, in the national capital region of Philippines, so there is no operation. Really, there's no operation. Then after the day, change again to the modified enhanced community quarantine, and there is like a little bit operation. Then after that, they make just general community quarantine. And then, so if we see here, so there is like 14 sector code. In here, we can see like sector code number 3 is the most impactful during this lockdown, means manufacturing industry. Then after that, construction, and then after that, the land transportation, water transportation, air transportation. We can say like just general, all of the transportation had an impact because of the lockdown. And then how about the economic? We can see the most sector that affected by the sector is by the lockdown, sorry, is the manufacturing and then also the trade. So first is the trade. We can see here is the blue line. It's around like 65.7 billion USD dollar if we convert PHP to dollar. So first is the trade one. Then after that is the manufacturing. We know like manufacturing is really close to the supply chain. And then after that is the private services. Then after that, mining and also manufacturing. And also the interesting one is agriculture, fishery, and forestry. Here, the green one is around 36 billion PHP. So based on this background, and then I reach more, and then there is a challenges. I found the problem that the partner only focus on the individual benefits. Yeah, they focus. Oh, there's an impact in the economic of our organization and our partner. They just focus on how to make them is not collapse because of this disruption in the economic and the transportation, the regulation, and anything. Then also the inter-organization barrier. So there's a barriers between the one of organization or the collaboration between the organization. So because of these two, because of these two challenges, so the supply chain collaborative performance collapse. So it's keep decreasing because there's something that stopped us because of the lockdown, for example, or the government's regulation, or the buyer, or the income of our customer. So they have challenges to make the collaborative performance collapse. So my objective is right now is just simple: how to strengthen the supply chain partnership through the organization integration. So there are two important things in the integration. I want to focus on the external and also the internal. So we have like a stakeholder theory that we have to focus on not only internal, but also focus on external that affects our growth. Then, so I found that 12 things to focus on improvement if you want to strengthen our partnership and relationship with our partner. So first is trust, because there are a lack of trust, and then after that, make them just focus on the short-term relationship, and also behavioral uncertainty, because you know our behavior during this pandemic is also changing slightly for some people. Normally we can do the meeting in offline, meet the person. Now we change, like we have to adapt with the technology, and also cultural difference. My culture in Indonesia, in Korea or Australia adapts with the COVID-19 is so totally different. So we have many regulation about that. And even, for example, like in my country, we have to do the PCR even though we have to move to another city. But in Korea, we don't need to do that. And also different goals of the organization. Yeah, every organization have the goals, and then non-standardized performance metrics, lack of commitments, and small firms. Now we have like many startup, and then like small enterprise in many countries, and also the governmental intervention, and then pricing obstacles. This is like we can say like a classic problem, but this is really obstacle that we're facing. Like the transportation in my country is really higher than the product itself. If we want to send one container like 20 feet from Jakarta to Surabaya, for example, and also lack of resource sharing. So and then the last one is lack of adaptation. So based on this one, and then the research literature review, I found that interesting to strengthen it. First, the core is should be the trust. We can see here the trust. So if we at least not fully 100% trust, let's say like, yeah, we want to try to believe this organization or this supplier or this company or this industry. So we start to research and then sharing the information. We collect information from them. We make the meeting and yeah, so I want to understand each other. Then because of we know much about the information, we can communicate. We strengthen our communication. Sometimes the problem is just the communication. So there is a communication barrier, maybe the language or the time. So after that, if we can build our trust and sharing the information, and then we do good communication, and then we can make a strong commitment. After this is for the internal organization. So each organization should focus on for this important part, like first build the trust, and then collect the information and sharing the information. Yeah, we have to define the confidential one and then like the open one, and then we have to make a good communication based on what we can share about the information, our goal, our problem, something like that. Then we can make a commitment. So we have trust, we got the information, so we can make a commitment. So if we can build this one, so for the external organization, we can get that long-term relationship. For the long-term relationship, we can get it with the other organization, and then we can sharing the resources. Sometimes because of this pandemic, some of the company they have a lot of resources, but because of another part has less or have a problem, for example, for the distribution, for the transportation, you can see the data before the trade is really high, and then after that is transportation. Even though we have a lot of resources, so we cannot transport it to another city that where is the demand exists, and then we can adapt after we make the long relationship, and then we sharing the resources. We can adapt because we know like, oh, now we are together, and then we can focus on what should we can do, and then what should we fix, and then what plan or operation or strategy that we have to change, because we have the core is the trust. So this is about that. Then the conclusion for this is trust is one of the important enabler for supply chain partnership. So we cannot be a partner if we don't have a trust. So we have to focus on how to build our trust. Maybe the organization or the HR in the government, or the HR in the company or the industry, make some financial literacy, communication literacy, or trust or capability for the humans inside of the organization, so we can make a good relationship, not only for our partner outside of the organization but also inside. Then lack of commitment cause of lack of information sharing. So because we don't have commitment, so we cannot share. Sometimes we have the information but we don't want to share because we don't have the commitment yet. Because why? Because of the trust. And then we have to have a good communication, how to present that one. So communication represents an insufficient exchange of messages and few among firms. This is the visibility come in. So we have to know about the visibility of the firms before we do the collaboration and the partnership. So, and then the reluctance of to share information increase coordination costs and leads to the deterioration in performance. So we have our growth and our partnership during this pandemic. Maybe that is the short sharing idea from me. Thank you. Kamsahamnida. I'll give it back to you, Professor Boy Kim.
Thank you, Harris. That is very, very, very illuminating in terms of telling us what this partnership needs in the context of Indonesia. As I mentioned earlier, I would not take any questions for the moment, but any questions for Dimas, can you please put in the chat box? We are almost back to our original schedule, so I will move on very quickly to our next speakers, and I'll share my screen now. Our next speakers, literally to those people at RMIT, especially Department of Logistics and Supply Chain, needs very little introductions because he is so famous, right, and so popular. I have to just say that. Okay, but for our Korean friends, in case you have not heard of the name Prem Chatterjee, Professor Prem Chatterjee is our head of department. Indirectly, he's my boss. All right, he's a professor of geologistics, and he's internationally known for his research in spatially integrated analytics and urban logistics. He has conducted research in many different areas: port logistics, climate change, urban modeling, tourism, potential mapping, emergency response, humanitarian logistics. That's why he posed this question to Jin Jun, I think that's your name, Jin Jun, just now. And he has also, in recent times, been looking at skills and training, infrastructures, logistics planning, and risk management. I should not say anything further because if I do that, I will run over time again, and you will not have the opportunity to listen to a very entertaining speakers. All right, over to you, Prem. I shut up. Prem, you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you very much, Professor Pui, for the kind introduction and your generous words. What I'm trying to do is to upload my slide. Sorry. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Oh, you can.
Yes, we can.
That was a bit of a relief. Thank you very much, Anya Seo. Before I formally commence, I would like to express my gratitude and sincere thanks to Associate Professor Vin Tai and Professor Hyunmi Jang from Busan University to present at this RMIT Busan National University Staff Exchange, Student Exchange Research webinar today. Thank you very much. Today, I will take these unique opportunities to present my thoughts on this highly controversial and thought-provoking topic, rethinking post-COVID-19 cities, future possibilities and plausibilities. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers to some of the wicked questions that we confront today, this totally transformed world, given the scale of pandemic shaping cities. What I have today for you is a set of questions really for you to contemplate and integrate in your research. How will COVID-19 impact our cities? What are the key factors that leave cities more vulnerable to supply chain disruptions? How will our cities be reshaped to enhance city logistics efficiency and performance? What can cities best prepare to open, reopen, and recover? Today presentation got three different parts. The first part built a platform for debate and discussion. I'll throw certain controversial statements about the future of cities in post-COVID-19 context. Then I'll present the case where we have undertaken a piece of work looking into COVID vaccine supply chain. The work was carried out within the department, and Professor Babak Abbasi, Dr. Shahruz, Professor Naima in Norway, and Dr. Olga, key researchers on this particular project. Lastly, I'll talk quite briefly about some of the strategies that would help us mitigate some of the challenges that we have in the distribution of vaccine supply chain in a large metropolitan setting, the complexity that involves in tackling those sorts of network-related supply chain difficulties. The presentation today is largely, particularly the first part, is a collation and compilation of the current body of knowledge of this emerging and highly contentious topic, where I would wear a hat of an urban planner, a geographer that talks about city as an organic entity constantly changing and shaping itself in terms of its morphology, its urban form, but also the functions it provides, the opportunities to work for recreation, for other activities that really create the kind of urban ambience within which we live and work. I'll acknowledge those work a little later at the end of my presentation. Can you see my slides? Hello?
Yes.
Oh,
sorry. Mine was muted. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. So I'll start with a quote. To store the filth of a city within a city is simply to invite disease and deaths. It's a book written a while ago in 1840. Written by Stanley and Pearson. The title was The Separate Systems of Sewage, Its Theory and Construction. What clearly highlighted, when we don't manage cities, we end up having severe endemic and pandemics really causing havoc in our urban settlements. London cholera epidemics, Spanish flu of 1918. These were prominent in those days and very, very difficult to manage for urban authorities. There have been a number of initiatives more lately in more successful and more prosperous cities, such as Singapore, who have reinvented and aiming and intending to create healthy city environment. Since 2016, National Parks Board of Singapore has been building therapeutic gardens. Now, of course, it's quite a micro scale development rather than a city-wide development of public parks to boost the mental and emotional well-being of citizens. In Tokyo, in Korea, you have similar sort of urban design being introduced to facilitate social interaction or reduce social interactions, social contacts. Citizens are really working with urban designers to greenify their neighborhoods to improve their health. However, not all cities are privileged, not cities have equally vulnerable to diseases. Wealthy cities like Copenhagen, with a lot of green spaces and provision of cycling, are of course world famous for their health benefits. Nonetheless, it's a very different story for those living in informal settlements of less economically developed cities like Nairobi in Kenya, Dhaka, Mumbai, and many cities in South Asia, Southeast Asia. Look, pandemic's not new to us. Even more recently, the 21st century, we have seen SARS, and MERS, and Ebola, bird flu, swine flu, and now we have COVID-19. So if we have indeed entered an era of pandemics, and we now need to really think through how we manage pandemics, both short-term, medium-term, and long-term. We need to really think through what city means to us. We really need to think through how we really retrofit our cities to fit into the new challenges that are constantly threatening our life. The new coronavirus really spread quite rapidly around the world. How might the virus make us think differently about urban design in the future? With estimated 68% of the world population will live in cities by 2050, the need to design cities well for pandemic will now get more pressing. In 10 years' time, an estimated 20% of the world population will live in urban environment with very limited access of appropriate drinkable water, health, and sanitation infrastructure. So not all cities are wealthy to invest on physical infrastructure to support healthy living. How do we manage growth, economic development, and environmental protections along with the healthy outcome for the citizens? So how do we build a city for pandemic? That is the question which is quite difficult to answer. I suspect we're seeing a lot of transformation of a city. I suspect, and I really envisage that if you don't manage pandemic quite well, the CBD, we can really imminently going to see the death of the CBD. What does that mean? Look, the working conditions changing. Organizations are now allowing people to work from home where they can, particularly in the developed part of the world, which are heavily services oriented. They don't need to be at work. Manufacturing is becoming quite automated, so they are increasingly becoming less and less human controlled or managed. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth are really shaping the way we operate our plants and manufacturing units. So we got this choice of working from home. What does it do to the cities? Why cities were created? Cities were designed, largely most cities are monocentric cities, meaning that they only have one CBD, which is the center for economic activities, jobs, retail, and entertainment. So people live typically in suburbia, they commute to work in the morning, and they return back to the suburbia in the evening by trains, public transport. So public transport network and our road infrastructure is designed in a way to converse into the city seamlessly. What will happen to that patterns? That patterns will collapse. So people will not see any need to come to the CBD. What happened then to the retail in the CBD? What is the future of the shopping centers? We created this mammoth shopping centers based on the American model, where we go to the shopping center in our suburbia, we park a car, we do a shopping, and then bring the grocery back to the home. Now we got online shopping, rise of the omni-channel, rise of the e-commerce, and we're now getting used to home delivery. What is going to happen to the shopping centers? Are these larger scale infrastructure will become dilapidated in the future, become junkyard for people to hang around? Will they thrive? Maybe not immediately, but beyond 20, 30 years time, what will happen? What sort of cities we see in the future? How do we design our transportation hub, airports? That will definitely shape the design of the airport with social contact, social distancing rule. The travel almost stopped. Now to recover being quite a big challenge. I want to go through on and on about these things. Is my slides moving? I'm having a little difficulty here.
Your slides is not moving.
Not moving. Yeah. Okay. So
you are still on that. How do you build a city for pandemic? Yeah. So
thank you very much. So we need to really think through urban structure and redesign of public spaces. I'm going to go very quickly now. So the COVID-19 is really reinforcing class divide. Our society and our city is going to be especially fragmented into parts where we're going to have very little interactions and movement between different parts of the city. So we're going to have that kind of inequality emerging where we have advantage and disadvantage type of behavior. Well, people are moving out of the cities. They are going to the regional towns, sea change along the coast, those sorts of townships. Our city is going to be depopulated is something we need to really think through. And the resultant logistics and urban freight movement needed to really divert cargoes into those areas. Social isolation is a major problem. We've been isolating for a long time, and Melbourne is the longest serving lockdown cities in the world, really impacting our social behavior, social engagement, so on and so forth. There've been changes. Some cities are able to respond quite promptly, effectively. An example of that is London Hospital being built that can accommodate 4,000 patients, Nightingale Hospital in London. Wuhan in China, they built things in 10 days, which can accommodate 1,000 beds. So cities being responding quite well. You got smartphone, contact tracing technology widely adapted, then issues around privacy comes in, using Bluetooth technology, Wi-Fi technology to trace people and create alerts, help mitigate those sorts of risks. So all of these things are really dictating and shaping our behavior, and that behavior is important in terms of designing those cities where we live. So I'll quickly go through some of the work that we have undertaken at the department and talks about building that kind of resilient supply chain to serve that city, which is quite complex. I already acknowledged the work of my co-researchers on this topic. I won't go again, but what I would like to talk about answering some of these complex questions in terms of how we supply vaccines, and some of you already done this practically, but I don't know whether that was done effectively and efficiently, we don't know. But these are the questions which we'd be aiming to answer through this citizen support system. Who needs to take the vaccine first to minimize the risk of infection? What are the areas with high level of susceptibility to COVID-19? What is daily assignment and schedule to efficiently distribute vaccines to population based on priority levels to the nearest vaccine centers? What are the best amount of vaccine packs to be assigned to each vaccination centers to minimize vaccine degradation? What is the best capacity, numbers of staff required for vaccination, inoculation for each vaccination center to minimize service waiting time? And finally, what is the best daily assignment vaccine packs and routing, distribution, transportation with minimum required couriers from the central hub to the vaccination centers? So if you look at the structure through which cities are are constructed in terms of the distribution network. You got storage layer. Vaccines are, as we know, we're not locally producing or manufacturing them, we're procuring it from overseas, so they naturally come to as air freight to our airport and then taken and stored in a centralized refrigerated warehouse sort of facility. Now, these vaccines need to be taken and delivered to vaccine centers. So, and these vaccine centers are interspersed within different parts of the cities unequitably. In some areas you have more, in other areas you have less, depending on the population size and distribution. People live in dwellings and houses, and they come to those centers to get vaccination. Vaccines are undertaken as a first dose and the second dose. So you've got a lot of complexities involved in that distribution network, both in terms of assignment, allocation, scheduling, distribution, routing. So quite a complex problem that we have. And the other one that I really forgot was the prioritization. You know, who's going to get the vaccine first? That way you give vaccines to people, those who are really vulnerable. And how do you ascertain vulnerability? You know, you think that we need to give vaccines to the frontline workers, older age population, people with chronic health conditions, so forth. And in this case, Bui, how am I traveling with time?
If you can wrap up in 5 minutes or so, then we would have time for 3 questions at least.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what we did, we used the GIS and spatial analytics to map areas that are at greater risk of infection spread. We use the population data to ascertain the age profile, but also we use the health indicators, health variables, chronic health conditions, and so on and so forth. And then we started allocating those vaccine packs to vaccine centers. So as you're familiar, some of you are familiar, maybe not the South Korean friends. This is the map of Melbourne metropolitan area, basically illustrating the distribution of confirmed COVID-19 cases per 100,000 people. You can see a lot of concentration in the western suburb of Melbourne, as well as northern suburbs. Some pockets around Dandenong, you can see greater concentration, but quite unequitably distributed. Some are, in other words, some are more prone to spread than others. So what we did, we've taken a large number of indicators or criteria. We come up with a scheme for prioritization for different areas, so different parts of the city. So in this case, you can see C1, C2, C3, all the way to C9. These are different criteria we have used in order to develop the prioritization scheme and to identify sort of hotspots areas where we need to really target rather than going equal distribution of vaccines across the whole metropolitan area. This is the algorithm. I don't need to go through it, but basically it shows that how vaccine packs were being assigned and allocated to vaccination centers all the way from first dose to second dose. I won't go through the complex algorithm here. I'm not really sure Shahroz is here today with us, but you might be able to explain it better than me. Apart from allocation of vaccines to vaccine centers, the issues around distribution and routings pops up as well. So we use the greedy vaccine heuristic algorithm. You can see the pseudocode that explains different steps and a range of constraints. We come up with 3 different scenarios where we have limited supply chain, sort of shortest scenario, and then we created routing, as you can see through that network diagrams across Melbourne metropolitan area. Limited supply scenario 1, excess daily supply, and of course we create third scenario that talks about supply disruption, erratic behavior in the supply chain, which then asks require us to adapt our algorithm to best generate the routing and the distribution schedule for the city. What we found, vaccines can be prioritized to society's most vulnerable segments and distributed quite effectively in Melbourne, no problem at all. If we plan it well, the real-time decision adjustment in the distribution plan can be adjusted. Future unforeseen disruption can also be taken care of. I've got to go through quickly. Supply chain disruptions is a code there. US, China trade war and supply chain demand shocks really affected by the COVID-19 crisis, really forcing manufacturers, and some of this being already highlighted in previous talk. It's pressure building to increase domestic production because of uncertainty in the global supply and growth employment in the home countries, with the Trump talking about trade war and reduce their dependence on risky sources, so diversifying the source of risk suppliers, and also rethinking strategies for lean inventories and just-in-time replenishment, some of these things to tackle these challenges. So I won't go. Building resilience is very important. Technology being suggested as a tool to help build that resilience. A framework being developed, there's a reference there, we didn't do this one. So you got low risk, high risk of disruption, high revenue and low revenue. So largely focusing on high revenue impact and high risk of disruptions. And you can see some suggestions for us to implement to mitigate those sorts of risks, including identifying and monitoring sub-tier suppliers, that of tier one suppliers, know where supply build and store their parts and raw materials, are sole suppliers to build and store parts at alternative sites. If one goes down, at least others are still operational, and so on and so forth. I have to rush given the time limit. 5 different types of strategies. This is my last slide, I guess. Create transparency for multi-tier supply chain, so establishing a list of critical components, determining the origin of supply and identify alternative sources, estimate available inventory, assess realistic final customer demand for response, optimize production and distribution capacity, ensure employee safety, such as by supplying personal protective equipment and engaging with communication team to ensure infection levels remain low and work from home options are available to staff. So these sort of steps will enable leaders to really understand current and projected capacity level of both workforce and the materials available. And finally, identify and secure logistic capacity, estimating capacity, and I think Aomi mentioned about the predictive demand, those sorts of things, quite effective in dealing with those uncertainties. I'll stop here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
We have to go quite quickly.
Wow, thank you. All right, I give you 5 more minutes. Actually, you have taken 6 or more, I think, according to my clock. So, I can see in the chat that there were 2 outstanding questions not answered. And if the audience can bear with us for 2 minutes, I'll let the 2 speakers answer these 2 questions. Hopefully, it can be done in 1 minute. Omi, you saw your questions to the question from Priya to you. Do you want to address that in 30 seconds? That's a quick question. Omi, you still here? No? All
Yes,
right. Oh, yeah, you're there. Okay. Can you just answer that question? I think this is just a matter of your opinion.
Yeah, not a problem. So as I was saying, I think the question was regarding how we can reroute it to the local market. And definitely, I do feel internal production is important, especially in the Australian market right now. At the very least, we should be taking steps to encourage and strengthen small, medium enterprises to better compete with large-scale suppliers. I know a lot of people talk about it, that we need to have fair playing grounds for small suppliers and larger suppliers that supply to like Coles and Woolies and things like that. But I don't really feel that enough steps are being taken, because especially during the COVID pandemic, we've seen a lot of SMEs shut down or go bankrupt simply because they weren't able to stay afloat in the current market. Internal production manufacturing will also allow global disruptions to be mitigated. So the more we have at least a platform to produce and manufacture within Australia, international incidents such as like not just the pandemic, but the Suez Canal incident, all of these things can be mitigated even if fractionally by having the capacity and the capabilities to produce and manufacture onshore rather than being completely dependent on offshore production and manufacturing.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is to you, Jinju. There was this question, if you are still here. How do you differentiate humanitarian logistics from emergency logistics in your literature search?
First, thank you for your question. In my opinion, the biggest difference of two is which they are focusing on. Humanitarian logistics focuses on people's lives, so sometimes expense can be regarded as the next priority. However, emergent logistics must consider expense and efficiency at the same time. Second, if I say the difference of two, I want to say humanitarian needs a long time perspective and preparations. Sometimes humanitarian logistics is needed in the situation of long affecting disasters like drought, famine, or long-lasting war. But as emergent logistics deals with events occurred unexpected, the most requiring thing is the instant response. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jinju. I'll take one last minute to sum out. First, I would like to thank all the speakers for a very, very engaging, and I should say there's just isn't enough time to so-called chew over so much of the informations and materials. They're so, mind-boggling and so illuminating. So I first want to thank all the speakers, and I want to thank the organizers for doing this. And I want to suggest to all the organizers that the next webinar needs to be 3 hours if you are organizing yet another one. All right. I don't think there's enough time allocated to do justice to what has been very, very rich presentations. We just do not have the time to do any discussions, especially the last presentations by Professor Chetri. All right. So the 5 presentations, I think, linked central to all that, I think, can be summarized in one word. And this is nested in the presentation of Dimas. And I think the word is trust. Whether it's CSR, whether so-called country of origin or CSR, I think the important questions is about trust. Building resilience, whether so-called within the company sectors, right, or in so-called city levels, receiving vaccine or not receiving vaccine, again, is all about trust. So humanitarian logistics, likewise, is all about the trust that we have in all these organizations supporting all the good works to give humanitarian so-called the dignity that they deserve. So I will just conclude with the so-called words that thank to all the participants and thank to all the speakers. Kamsia Hamida. Thank you. Vin, you want to say anything?
Where are you?
All right, so Vin.
I can't hear you.
Vin, you are muted. You are muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Vin. Please, if you want to say anything before I shut the platform down. I can't hear you, Vin.
I think he's in a car.
Yeah,
he's probably picking up his child. He's probably picking up his son or something.
He is.
It's Friday already, right?
He has very thankful eyes. He's showing thank you with his eyes.
We can't hear you, Win.
Yeah,
All right,
he can hear us. He can hear us.
All right, I think we'll just bring this to a close. I know many of you would have other commitments, but once again, thank you to everyone, speakers and audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bui.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor.
Kamsahamnida.
Thank you, everyone.
Kamsahamnida.
Thank you, everyone.
Kamsahamnida.
Thanks.